What happens when a beloved late-night host meets his match in the most unexpected guest? When royal privilege crashes headfirst into American television? In just 45 seconds, one comment would turn a routine celebrity interview into the most shocking television moment of the year. Stephen Colbert sat behind his familiar desk, his trademark grin lighting up Studio 57. The audience buzzed with excitement. Tonight's guest was special, even by late show standards. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, member of the British royal family, was making his first appearance on the show to promote his latest charitable initiative. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Colbert announced with genuine warmth. The prince walked onto the stage with that practiced royal wave, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit. The audience erupted in applause. He seemed relaxed, confident, maybe even a little too comfortable as he settled into the guest chair. "Your Royal Highness, welcome to the show," Colbert said, extending his hand for a shake. Harry paused for just a moment, looking at the outstretched hand with what could only be described as mild confusion. "Actually, it's just Harry now," he said, finally taking the handshake but holding it longer than necessary. "Though I appreciate the respect you're showing, unlike some hosts I've encountered." The first red flag. Colbert's smile flickered for just a microsecond, but his professional instincts kicked in immediately. "Of course, Harry. Thanks for being here. I have to say, our audience is thrilled to meet you." "Well, they should be," Harry replied, settling back in his chair with an air of casual arrogance. "It's not every day they get to meet someone who's actually making a difference in the world." The audience laughed, thinking it was a joke. Colbert chuckled along, but his eyes showed he was already recalibrating. This wasn't the humble, reformed royal he'd been expecting. "Speaking of making a difference," Colbert said, steering toward safer ground, "tell us about your new foundation. It sounds like incredible work you're doing with veterans." Harry's posture straightened, and for a moment, his voice carried genuine passion. "The Invictus Games Foundation means everything to me. These brave men and women have sacrificed so much for their countries. They deserve our support, our respect, and frankly, better treatment than they've been getting from governments who send them to war and then forget about them." The audience applauded. This was the Harry they'd come to see, the passionate advocate, the man who'd walked away from royal duties to pursue meaningful work. "That's beautiful," Colbert said sincerely, "and I understand you've been working closely with wounded veterans here in America too." "Absolutely. American veterans face unique challenges, especially with your healthcare system." Harry leaned forward, his tone becoming more pointed. "It's quite shocking actually how poorly this country treats its heroes compared to what I'm used to back home." Another small red flag. Colbert maintained his composure, but the compliment had turned into a backhanded criticism of America faster than anyone expected. "Well, we're always looking to improve," Colbert replied diplomatically. "Healthcare is certainly a challenge we're working on. But speaking of challenges, you've faced your own share of media scrutiny over the years. How do you handle that?" Harry's expression darkened slightly. "The media is a different beast entirely, Stephen, especially here in America. The tabloids, the gossip shows, even some of the so-called respectable news programs. They twist everything, take things out of context, create drama where none exists." "That must be frustrating," Colbert acknowledged. "Frustrating doesn't begin to cover it," Harry continued, his voice rising just slightly. "Take your own network, for instance. CBS has run several pieces about me and my wife that were completely unfair, completely biased. They painted us as difficult, as demanding, when all we've ever done is try to live our truth and help people." The audience grew quieter. This wasn't the lighthearted celebrity chat they'd signed up for. Colbert's eyebrows raised almost imperceptibly. "I think our news division tries to be fair," Colbert said carefully. "Though I should mention, I don't have any control over what CBS News reports." "Oh, I'm sure you don't," Harry replied, but his tone suggested he believed the opposite. "It's just convenient how these things work, isn't it? The same network that employs you also employs the people who've been attacking my family for months." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Colbert's famous warmth was being tested in real time. "Harry, I think there might be some misunderstanding here," Colbert said, his voice still friendly, but with a slight edge. "I'm just a comedian who tells jokes and interviews guests. I don't have any influence over news coverage." "Just a comedian?" Harry repeated, with what sounded suspiciously like mockery. "Right. Just a comedian who happens to have one of the most influential platforms in American television? Just a comedian who could choose to use that platform to call out unfair coverage, but chooses not to." The audience was now completely silent. Even they could sense that something had gone terribly wrong. This wasn't playful banter. This was becoming an actual confrontation. Colbert took a deep breath, his professional smile wavering. I think we might want to focus on your foundation work. That's really why you're here, right? Actually, Stephen, I'm here because your producers promised me this would be a safe space to tell my story. They assured me you weren't like the other hosts, that you'd be respectful, that you'd understand what it means to have integrity in media. I try to treat all my guests with respect, Colbert replied, his voice becoming slightly tighter. Do you? Harry shot back. Because right now it feels like you're trying to shut me down the moment I bring up legitimate concerns about your own network. Is that what you call respect? The studio audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Some people were shifting in their seats. Others were looking around as if wondering whether they should leave. This was unlike anything they'd ever witnessed on The Late Show. I'm not trying to shut you down, Colbert said, his composure beginning to crack. I'm trying to have a conversation that our audience can enjoy. Enjoy? Harry's voice went up an octave. This isn't entertainment, Stephen. This is my life. This is my family's life. And your network, your colleagues, have been making our lives miserable for sport. Colbert could feel his own famous patience beginning to fray. 20 years of hosting had prepared him for difficult guests, but nothing quite like this. He'd interviewed presidents, celebrities, and world leaders, but none had ever attacked his integrity so directly on his own show. Harry, I understand you've had difficulties with media coverage, Colbert said, trying one more time to salvage the interview. But I think you're misunderstanding my role here. I host a comedy show. I tell jokes about the news. I don't create the news. Don't create the news? Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. Stephen, you have more power than most news anchors. When you make jokes about someone, millions of people hear it. When you choose not to defend someone, that sends a message too. The audience was now completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Some were pulling out their phones, probably wondering if they were witnessing television history. I make jokes about everyone, Colbert replied, his voice getting firmer. That's literally my job. I've made jokes about every president, every celebrity, every public figure. It's not personal. Not personal? Harry's voice cracked with indignation. You made jokes about my wife's miscarriage. You made jokes about our mental health struggles. How is that not personal? Colbert's face went pale. I've never made jokes about anyone's miscarriage or mental health. That's completely against everything I stand for. Oh, please. Harry waved his hand dismissively. Maybe not directly, but your writers did, your show did, and you let it happen under your name, on your platform. Harry, I think you might be confusing me with someone else, Colbert said, his voice now carrying a warning tone. I would never allow jokes about those topics on my show. Would never allow? Harry stood up from his chair, pointing at Colbert. Then explain the monologue from 3 months ago where you called our decision to step back from royal duties a royal tantrum. Explain the segment where you mocked our interview about racism in the royal family. The studio was dead silent now. Even the cameramen seemed frozen. Colbert remained seated, but his body language had completely changed. Gone was the welcoming host. In his place sat a man whose patience had finally reached its limit. Those weren't about your personal struggles, Colbert said slowly, his voice dangerously calm. Those were about public statements you made in public interviews. That's fair game, and you know it. Fair game? Harry was now pacing back and forth in front of the desk. My family's pain is fair game? Our trauma is fair game? You sitting here in your comfortable studio, making millions of dollars, mocking people who've actually suffered, who've actually sacrificed something? Sacrificed? The words seemed to hit Colbert like a slap. He leaned forward in his chair, his famous smile completely gone. You want to talk about sacrifice? You want to lecture me about suffering? I think I'm qualified to speak about both, Harry shot back. Colbert stood up now, his 6'3" frame towering over the desk. You're qualified? You're a man who was born into unimaginable wealth and privilege, who lived in palaces, who never had to worry about money or health care or whether you could afford to feed your children, and you want to lecture me about sacrifice? The audience gasped. This was Stephen Colbert like they'd never seen him before. You don't know anything about my life, Harry replied, but for the first time, his voice wavered slightly. I know enough, Colbert continued, his voice rising. I know you've never worked a real job in your life. I know you've never wondered how you'll pay rent. I know you've never had to choose between buying medicine or buying groceries. And now you come on my show that I built through actual hard work, and you attack my integrity because some other people at my network reported news you didn't like? Harry's face was turning red. You think growing up in the public eye was easy? You think having every mistake broadcast to the world was privilege compared to what most people go through? Yes, I do, Colbert fired back. You had the best education money could buy. You had security guards protecting you. You had people waiting on you hand and foot. And when you decided you didn't like the attention anymore, you had the luxury of walking away with millions of dollars and a platform to complain about how hard your life was. How dare you? Harry's voice was shaking with rage. How dare you minimize what my family went through? The racism, the death threats, the constant harassment. I'm not minimizing anything, Colbert replied, but his tone was ice cold now. I'm pointing out that you're attacking the wrong person. I didn't cause your problems, Harry. I didn't create the media circus around your life. And I certainly didn't invite you on my show so you could blame me for other people's actions. Harry took a step closer to the desk, his finger pointing directly at Colbert's face. You're part of the system, Stephen. You profit from the same machine that destroyed my family, the same machine that killed my mother. The mention of Princess Diana seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Even Colbert paused for a moment, but when he spoke again, his voice was steady and firm. Don't you dare, he said quietly. Don't you dare use your mother's memory to justify attacking people who had nothing to do with what happened to her. That's beneath you, and it's certainly beneath her memory. Harry's jaw dropped. For a moment, he seemed genuinely shocked that someone had pushed back so directly. You don't get to tell me how to honor my mother's memory, Harry said, but his voice had lost some of its fire. And you don't get to come on my show and attack my character because you're angry at the world, Colbert replied. This interview is over. But Harry wasn't done. Not even close. The words seemed to ignite something in him, something ugly and entitled that had been building throughout the entire interview. Over? Harry laughed bitterly. You're ending the interview because I called out your network's lies? Because I dared to hold you accountable for the platform you profit from? Colbert turned to his producer off stage and made a cutting motion across his throat, the universal television signal for cut to commercial. But Harry saw it, and his anger exploded. Oh, that's perfect, Harry shouted, loud enough that his voice echoed through the studio. Run to commercial. Silence the person telling the truth, just like every other coward in American media. The audience was frozen in shock. Some people were standing up, trying to get a better view of what was happening. Others looked like they wanted to run for the exits. Harry, you need to calm down, Colbert said firmly. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? Harry's voice cracked with fury. I'm embarrassing myself by standing up to a system that chews people up and spits them out for entertainment? A system that you're the smiling face of? Colbert walked around his desk now, no longer hiding behind the safety of his host position. You're embarrassing yourself by throwing a tantrum on live television because someone wouldn't let you blame them for your problems. Problems? Harry was practically screaming now. My problems? You mean the death threats my wife gets every day? The racist attacks on my children? The constant lies and harassment that your network participates in? My network reports the news, Harry. If you don't like the news, maybe stop making news. The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His face went from red to purple with rage. Stop making news? Harry's voice went dangerously quiet. You want to know what makes news, Stephen? This makes news. You treating a member of the royal family like some nobody who wandered in off the street. You disrespecting someone whose grandmother was the Queen of England. The studio fell completely silent. Even the camera operator stopped moving. Colbert stared at Harry for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to service, Colbert said slowly. She would be ashamed of how you're acting right now. Harry's eyes went wide with shock and rage. How dare you speak about my grandmother? How dare you use her memory to attack me? I'm not attacking you, Harry. I'm telling you the truth. The same truth everyone else in your life has probably been too polite or too scared to tell you. Colbert's voice grew stronger with each word. You're not special because of who your family is. You don't get to treat people badly because you have a title. And you certainly don't get to come on my show and attack my character because the world doesn't bow down to you anymore. Harry took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, it looked like he might actually try to physically confront Colbert. You have no idea what you're talking about, Harry snarled. You sit here in your ivory tower making jokes about people's pain, making money off other people's misery, and you think you can lecture me about character? I earned this, Colbert shot back. Everything I have I earned through hard work and treating people with respect. Something you clearly never learned how to do. Harry's composure finally snapped completely. Earned? You think you earned this? You're a court jester, Stephen, a dancing monkey who tells jokes to make rich people laugh while the world burns around them. At least I'm trying to make a difference." The insult hung in the air like poison. Colbert's jaw tightened, but when he spoke, his voice was controlled and precise. "Security," he called out calmly. Two large men in suits appeared from the wings almost immediately. They'd been waiting, probably hoping they wouldn't be needed. "What are you doing?" Harry demanded, looking back and forth between Colbert and the security guards. "I'm removing you from my show," Colbert said simply, "just like I would remove any other guest who came here to attack me and embarrass themselves." "You can't throw me out," Harry said, but his voice had lost its fire. Reality was finally setting in. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Colbert looked him dead in the eye. "You're someone who's no longer welcome on this show." The security guard stepped forward, not roughly, but firmly. "Sir, we need you to come with us," one of them said politely. Harry looked around the studio desperately, as if searching for allies. The audience stared back at him in stunned silence. His earlier supporters had vanished, replaced by people who looked embarrassed for him. "This is unbelievable," Harry muttered. But he was already moving toward the exit, the security guards flanking him. "Wait until the world hears about this. Wait until people find out how you really treat your guests." Colbert had returned to his position behind his desk, straightening his tie and smoothing his hair. "The world is hearing about it right now, Harry. We're live on television." The reminder seemed to hit Harry like a bucket of cold water. His eyes went wide as he realized that millions of people had just watched him have a complete meltdown on national television. He started to say something, but no words came out. "Gentlemen," Colbert said to the security guards, "please escort our guest out." As Harry was led away, he turned back one last time. "You'll regret this, Stephen. You have no idea what you've just done." Colbert waited until Harry was completely gone before turning back to face his audience. The studio was still dead silent, 400 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. "Well," Colbert said, his famous smile slowly returning to his face, "when we come back, we'll have some music from our friend Stay Human, and maybe I'll tell you about the time I interviewed someone who didn't blame me for the existence of journalism." The audience exploded into applause and laughter, the tension finally breaking. As the show went to commercial, Colbert sat back in his chair and shook his head, probably wondering how a simple charity promotion had turned into television history.